What's up everybody, Dr. Daniel Ricciardi with another video for you today. In this one, I'm gonna go over 10 signs that you may have SIBO. So there's not gonna be any official diagnostic suggestions in this video, but if you are somebody that's struggling, unfortunately, with a lot of different symptoms, perhaps some of the ones I'll go over, this may be a helpful checklist to see if treating SIBO is an avenue that you should pursue. So first up is excess gas. So this will show up in bloating, flatulence, but also belching as well. When we're taking in sugars and carbs, that normally feeds the SIBO, produces the gas, and you can have all three of these symptoms, sometimes one, sometimes all three. Second up is abdominal pain, discomfort, and cramps. And this kind of ties in a little bit with the first one. Obviously, if you have excess gas being produced, it's going to cause abdominal discomfort and then the cramp feeling just with outward pressure being forced on your gut. Third one is if you have SIBO, it can actually cause constipation and diarrhea. And the way this works that you can get both is when sugars or carbs are taken into the gut, they directly feed the SIBO bacteria. These bacteria metabolize the carbs and sugars, and they give off hydrogen gas. That hydrogen gas is responsible usually for the diarrhea, looser stool type symptoms. This hydrogen gas, though, is then taken up, absorbed, metabolized by a different type of microorganism called archaea. And these type of microorganisms, the archaea, they actually give off methane, which is responsible obviously for bad smell and flatulence, but also the constipation. So if you have a kind of a back and forth of diarrhea and constipation, would seem very odd. This may be a reason for it to be happening. All right, fourth sign is if you are an individual that has acid reflux and has been shoveling proton pump inhibitors, which lower stomach acid, Tums, Zantac, things like that for a long period of time. This could lead to SIBO because anything that is lowering stomach acid is actually going to be reducing your digestion as well. So you have food kind of sitting more in the stomach and intestines for longer. It becomes maldigested, eventually causing excess inflammation in the gut. And this is a way that SIBO can also be formed. Fifth one up. Are you having trouble figuring out which foods are causing your symptoms, or just think you can't ever get a hold on which foods are doing it? Sometimes you eat a food and it's fine, and then if you eat the same food the next week, it seems like it caused you a lot of symptoms. Although food sensitivities are a component of having a lot of symptoms, it may not really in fact be the food. It may just be SIBO's causing it. I know for me personally, this was something I had a really hard time figuring out. I even reduced my diet down to just a few foods to see if it was the case. And if you're eating 3 foods and you're still getting symptoms, it's very frustrating and also confusing. Next one, which is kind of a big one, is if you had a bout of food poisoning and then after the food poisoning, you notice you started having more digestive issues. This is a very big factor. With food poisoning, oftentimes a toxin can be released, and the toxin kind of impairs the migrating motor complex, and it can do that for years. If you watched any of my previous videos where I mentioned the migrating motor complex, MMC, it is a wave. It starts kind of in the stomach with digestion, and it's a wave-like flow, kind of sweeping the entire intestines, small and large intestines, clean of all food and other debris. And we need this to be done because if not, food just sits in our intestines, gets maldigested, and can lead to SIBO. Seventh one I have for you. Are you someone who's just not excited to eat anymore? At least for me personally, I knew anytime I ate, the bloating would be worse. So if I know I'm going to be hanging out on the beach and have my shirt off, if I'm eating food, I know it's going to cause me more symptoms. So kind of lost some joy for eating. I don't feel as hungry. You start feeling full right as you start eating a meal. Maybe even have unexplained weight loss, can all be tied into possibly a cause of having SIBO. Next up is if you have unexplained vitamin and mineral deficiencies. So with SIBO, a lot of it ties into having lower stomach acid. So some things that you can become more deficient or suboptimal in are iron, magnesium, calcium, vitamin D, vitamin B12, other fat-soluble vitamins such as A, E, and K as well. So oftentimes labs are very helpful to try to figure this out. Obviously, you have a hard time figuring out if your vitamin D is deficient without a lab. Some things, if they're pretty obvious, you can tell, such as if you have floating stools or grayish colored stools, it may be a sign that you're not digesting and absorbing fat as well. And as a result, it's likely that you're also not absorbing the fat soluble vitamins such as A, D, E, and K as well. Next up is if you've been diagnosed with Irritable Bowel Syndrome, IBS. So IBS is kind of just a name for a collection of symptoms. It doesn't really say why the symptoms occur, but symptoms include constipation, diarrhea, abdominal discomfort, things of that sort. And there's no visual abnormalities of the small intestines in IBS. So SIBO is actually extremely prevalent in cases of IBS, and they kind of have overlap on the same symptoms. And SIBO's more of a main cause, root cause of why IBS is happening for a lot of people. All right, and then very last one, number 10. Intuitively, if you know something is off, don't ignore that. Maybe you've went to the doctor, maybe you've went to several doctors and haven't been able to figure out kind of what's going on, or maybe you got some treatment and a little bit of relief, but you're still very dissatisfied with what's going on in your body. At least consider that SIBO may be in play if you have a bunch of these other symptoms going on. SIBO is incredibly underdiagnosed. It's not even really looked at unless you probably go to a GI specialist. Even then, it's still very, very uncommon and not really talked about. I worked as a pharmacist for 10 years. I think I heard the term SIBO maybe twice in the 10 years I was working, just to give you an idea. So that's all I have for you today. Send your comments down below and give me a like if you like the video. Thank you. Have a good day.